what does he have that I don't? He's only an enhanced remake of a Wii Kirby game from 10 years ago with an abundance of brand new features and additions. At an affordable price.
I've been waiting for this moment for so long, but it's finally here. The Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe game has officially launched for the Nintendo Switch line of systems. But for real though, Return to Dream Land Deluxe has been out for a bit, and oh, it is a really good game. But is it better than the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland, and is it the best Kirby remake of all time? Let's see. We all know it's obviously better than Extra Epic Yarn, who sadly passed away at the ripe age of like 3-4 years old, which is quite unfortunate. A moment of silence for the 2 Extra Epic Yarn fans right now. Alright, back to the video. Well, actually, before we get into the meat of this video, there's a few things I want to disclose here, and the first is, this will be less of a full-on review video because, well, I already have a Return to Dreamland review up on my channel, which I did out of the RTDX hype. Please, we need to normalize using RTDX instead of RTDLDX. If you use that, you are insane. That's not to say this is just not going to be a review video at all and just, like, discussing the changes of Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe, because that's not entirely what I'm here to do. There are modes like Merry Magoland and the Magolor Epilogue, which give me a ton of new stuff to sink my teeth into, lots of new stuff to review there. But for, like, the main story and extra mode and the arenas, I'll mostly just talk about the changes and whether I think they were any good. Of course, that's not to say I won't mention things like the level design is good, or the bosses are good, or the story is good, and all that stuff. But if you want to hear me go more in-depth about it and how it revolutionized the Kirby series going forward, check out my other video, and also I appreciate the views. Please, I'm desperate. And 2, I just want to give a quick spoiler warning for the main game. I have a feeling I'm probably just gonna casually name some massive spoilers for the endgame, randomly, unprompted, because, well, with the epilogue, it's our first time experiencing it as a fandom. I've been playing base Return to Dreamland for God knows how long. So yeah, if that bothers you, you should probably go experience the story mode of Return to Dreamland for the first time before watching this. So, yeah, with that said, let's get into this. Let's see if Return to Dreamland Deluxe is the best Kirby remake. Alright, so like I said in the intro, most of this video up until I discuss Magoland and the epilogue is mostly just going to be me not really reviewing anything and more just talking about changes and whether I think they were good. So, I suppose the best place to start is with the changes that they made to the gameplay. The controls are pretty much identical to normal Return to Dreamland. The base gameplay of controlling Kirby and moving him around and hovering and inhaling and all that stuff, pretty much the same. Of course, I'm sure someone who's extremely hyperfixated on Kirby controls is going to correct me and say there's 0.2 seconds of input delay or something, but really, I don't care. It works very well, so I'm satisfied with that. The only thing that could really be argued as a real change to the base Kirby gameplay that you do with your controller is, well, the right stick now lets you do these little taunts, and really this is a cute feature that I only found out about by looking on the wiki. Each playable character, including Magolor in the Magolor Epilogue, each gets 4 of these cute little taunts, and I love them. They're full of personality, they help bring the characters to life even further. It's wonderful stuff, and I couldn't stop using them once I found out about them. Okay, I do have to take back what I said about the controls pretty much being perfect, because there is one minor flaw I have, at least when playing with a Pro Controller, which is my preferred style of play. Remember when in the original game you simply had to shake the Wii Remote to do a super inhale or use a certain super ability? Well, now you either have to fiddle around with the D-pad or joystick, or just press a button. Here's 3 instances from the game that really stick out in my mind where the shaking is replaced with button controls from worst to best. The best thing I have in my memory banks is Snowball, which requires you to simply just press the B button to send it off. Personally, I felt it was more satisfying with the Wii Remote, but this works well enough. Grand Hammer, I just didn't want to get it up to its max power most of the time, so maybe it's because shaking the Wii Remote vigorously is like second nature to me when I get Grand Hammer, but it just felt so cumbersome messing with the buttons in order to get it to its full power. And worst of all, doing the super inhale. The super inhale is so hard to pull off now, with a Pro Controller at least, because you need to inhale for a few seconds before it kicks in. Getting big star bullets by cramming a bunch down Kirby's gullet is a lot harder now that you can't just shake to get that result immediately. Sometimes you'll try to inhale a bunch of things, but you'll only end up inhaling the first thing because the super inhale didn't kick in at the right time, and It makes your damage output a lot slower against bosses, and dear god, another dimension sections have become a ton more difficult now that you can't just super inhale whenever and you need to wait for a little bit to get it into effect. Sometimes I just found myself playing another dimension section super recklessly in order to just get through them faster to avoid needing to suck up any of the gray star blocks necessary to progress. It's a minor nitpick because while it was super annoying on my playthrough at some points, it's not really the game's fault and it's more the Pro Controller's fault for not having any motion controls. And sure, I could have busted out my own Joy-Cons in order to make my gameplay experience a little better and prevent me from shaking the Pro Controller like an idiot sometimes. You should have seen me play the demo, that habit was kicking in so hard. Well, let's be real, once you get a Pro Controller, do you ever feel like busting out your Joy-Cons again? And I guess to continue this negative streak a little bit before cutting it for like the rest of the gameplay section, why can't you play as any other characters besides Kirby outside of the arena and True Arena and also the Magolor Epilogue, but that's a Magolor mode, so that doesn't really count. Ah, come on. They even got their Star Allies movesets here, so that gives them more value to play as. Come on, why'd you have to do this? They would have been such cool unlockables. While we're on the topic of moveset changes, a lot of abilities got moves introduced from Triple Deluxe onward into their movesets here, which I think is pretty cool, so let's talk about it. Some of the moveset changes here are that Hammer's Hammer Flip can now be charged, Sword gets access to the Twister Slash Energy Sword and Hat Thrust, Stone gets the Mighty Uppercut and Stone Rotate, and my personal favorite of these upgrades, Fire gets the Searing Burn and the Fireball Jump, which makes it a ton more fun to play as in Return to Dream Land Deluxe. Some abilities have also received some visual changes, like Wing getting a completely rehauled design, which I think looks pretty cool, even if I do prefer the original. Stone getting some brand new transformations, including these ones based on Forgotten Land and Dream Buffet. And Ultra Sword gets some brand new swords, like this one based on Wild Edge, and also a Morpho Knight sword, which is pretty cool. Super abilities also give you a little speed boost when you have them now, so I think that's pretty cool. It really does add to the feeling that they're these all-powerful abilities that destroy everything in their path. Otherwise, as far as I know, the rest of the abilities work pretty much the same, and that's not a bad thing because, well, most of them were pretty damn good in the original game to begin with. However, I do think there was one missed opportunity, and that was with Spear. My original video was definitely uninformed about this one. In my original video, I thought that downward spear thrust dash thing, I forgot what the move was called, but you probably know what I'm talking about. I thought that was going to be included in Spear's moveset due to some footage of Bandana Waddle Dee being able to perform that move, but no, they just copy and pasted Bandana Waddle Dee's moveset from Star Allies and did not give that perk to Spear, which was really sad when I found out about it. However, that's really the only thing I can cite as a real ability moveset change missed opportunity besides making high jump good, so yeah, the abilities, I'd say they are an improvement over the original game due to the variety of new moves added. Now, before I get into talking about Return to Dream Land Deluxe's two big new abilities and Festival for some fucking reason, let's talk about the souvenir system. In Merry Magoland, you'll be able to earn these things called souvenir items, which are basically just items like Maxim tomatoes and balloon bombs and cracklers, and by speaking to this park attendant Waddle Dee that you'll find in Magoland or just in hub worlds throughout the main game, you'll be able to equip one item into this slot which you can take with you into a stage, and yeah, you're able to bring that item out at any point in the stage whenever you desire. I was expecting this feature to be a lot better though, because the results were kind of disappointing. Yes, just as I predicted in my original video, you can bring a crackler or balloon bomb into any given stage, and depending on if a crackler or balloon bomb related challenge is there, you can just cheese it and get free energy spheres with no skill whatsoever, which is sad. Reminds me a lot of how busted the Ravel abilities were in Extra Epic Yarn. Too bad he had to get busted up himself. And I was thinking the best thing about these would be bringing them into boss fights, but they just don't do the whopping amount of damage I was expecting to make them sort of the type of broken where you just go like, oh, did you see that? Oh, that like took like 76% off his health bar. Oh. Like, see, so I tested out a balloon bomb on my good friend Dude the Red over here, and yeah, that damage was super disappointing. A huge-ass bomb like this should be doing way more damage than that. Come on, this is ridiculous. The thing's got fireworks and everything. How did it do that much damage? Ugh, can anyone tell me what kind of bomb this was? A total dud. But on to the brand new abilities added in Return to Dream Land Deluxe and Festival for some fucking reason. So let's talk about Festival for some fucking reason. Why is it even here? All you really get is Crash, but with this cute little animation, which I will admit is pretty cool, but I don't think it justifies the ability's inclusion in this game whatsoever, and lots of point stars, because in Kirby games, you're usually pretty tight on lives, you know? You're always really tight on lives in Kirby games. I still feel the same about it as I did in Star Allies, although I will say it's a smidge better because I like the cute little animation when Magolor shows up, just because. I swear, once Festival gets a moveset that actually manages to fit its awesome design, I can die happy. Please, give this one the magic treatment, and also bring magic back, I'd love that. I swear, if I see Festival's face slapped into the next Kirby game without a full new original moveset, I'm gonna go insane. Thankfully, the other two abilities are much better, and nowhere near as broken as I had feared. Yes, even Mecha, and I suppose we should start talking about Mecha first because, well, it's the one that we didn't get to experience in the demo, so it's completely fresh. I believe most people were more excited to see how Mecha would work in the actual game than Sand. Personally, I was always in the Sand camp since it was revealed because, you know, I wanted a Sand Kirby for quite a bit, but Mecha was still pretty cool, and I was not disappointed by how it turned out in the actual game. Tons of cool moves here. We got the fireball thrusters, which go up in a little arc and give you the ability to burn things like ice blocks. You got these little mine spark things, you know, like Metal General throws out. Pretty cool reference, and I think it's quite a useful move at some points. And also, my personal favorite move is that one little chain combo move you can do where first you use the dash electric punch thing, then you step on the brakes, and then bam, check that out. Check out that laser. That is so cool and so useful and so powerful. I love that move so much. When I saw that, I lost it. That was so cool. Alternatively, if you want that same laser firepower, you could simply just hold down the B button, and one thing I like about that is it gives you two different ways to manage to land the same attack, and despite one option being faster, you might wind up dashing into a boss if you're not careful, and in some situations it's simply just better to sit still and hold down the button, which I think is pretty cool. Gives you a bit of strategy when trying to use the laser, and there's also some other cool stuff too, such as your hover being replaced with this jet booster attack thing, which makes traveling through the air easier, as well as this cool rapid fire attack, which isn't like the most useful thing ever, but I think it's fun to bust out every once in a while. Mecha, however, is a little busted. Not as busted as I was expecting, which is good, but it does kind of throw off the balance a little bit in certain areas, such as the first stage of White Wafers, or hell, just the entirety of White Wafers. Stage 1 of White Wafers in the original game served as sort of an introduction to the fighter ability where you'd learn to use the Hadouken attack in order to melt these ice blocks, or at least that was always my interpretation of it. Sure, there's a fire Galbo right there, but let's be real, we want to stick with fighter here, I think. And yeah, I think it was always a pretty cool thing to discover and a great way of teaching the player about the new ability. But you'll probably feel more inclined to use Mecha, which also makes its first real formal appearance in White Wafers, I believe, with the little enemy guy showing up here, and yeah, you could just use the fireball thrusters and Steel Fighter's Spotlight, which is not cool, bro. Ice is never a problem for Mecha either because dashing just lets you hover above it, which breaks an energy sphere, I think, by making it a lot easier to do. And in the last stage of White Wafers, there is an energy sphere that requires you to use ice in order to freeze these Mopus into ice blocks in order to hit this switch and open up this gate to get an energy sphere, but now you can just stand on the platform where the Chili's positioned, fire a laser, and the energy sphere is yours. And those are just a few energy spheres, and if you really want to be picky, you can just go back and bring Mecha into any given stage, and I'm sure you can cheese tons of energy spheres in stages where you're probably not even going to be having it going in. Personally, I think that's a pretty silly way to say Mecha is busted, because at that rate you're just trying to bust the whole game yourself. So I'm only looking at instances where the ability's handed to you and you feel inclined to hold on to it rather than doing any backtracking, because that's just a more fair way of judging. And I apply that same philosophy with talking about Sand, which I'll talk about shortly, but I just want to say Another Dimension portals do a wonder for Return to Dream Land Deluxe's balance by removing your ability, and unless a Mecha or Sand copy essence is there before the Sphere Doomer fight, it's unlikely you'll have it going into the next stage. Unless you simply want to, like, kill the game's pacing by doing random backtracking just to get an ability, you're probably not going to be cheesing too many energy spheres with these abilities until they're directly handed out to you, which I think does make the balance a lot better than I was expecting, which is good. And as for Sand, I was expecting it to be better than Mecha, was I correct? Yes, I was. I love Sand. This ability is awesome and so versatile. Sand has access to so many different moves, and it's just such a wonderful and fun ability to use. So much versatility here. You got a grab move that basically acts like whip. You got a tornado move that does great job annihilating anything above it. There's a sandcastle move which does huge damage to anything in front of you. Oh, it's wonderful. It even has a guard just like Leaf that lets you just vanish and not take any damage from anything, except this time, if you happen to be in a bad spot when guarding, you don't need to sit around. You can just jump out as well as do some good damage. It is such a good move to use. And I'm just scratching the surface. There is so much good stuff about this ability. It can cheese a few energy spheres though, and I think it has one of the worst copy ability introductions in Kirby history, first showing up formally in 2-1, the first stage of Raisin Ruins, where it kind of steals Whip's spotlight with the sand grab, which was a really bad choice. Should have saved it for stage 2 or something. But I still love Sand a lot. Awesome ability. It kind of reminds me of Poison in a way. By the way, when are we going to get Poison back? Please bring Poison back! Return to Dream Land Deluxe does a great job expanding upon the controls of the original game, shaking problems and occasional balancing issues aside. It's not the exact perfect gameplay reimagining Superstar Ultra was thanks to those flaws, but it does come pretty close, and yeah, the gameplay is awesome. The level design in Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe is pretty much the exact same as the original Return to Dream Land, but I don't think that's a bad thing because the original game had fantastic level design and that made it one of the greatest Kirby games of all time. Everything is just as good as it was in the original game. Of course, like I said before, if you want to hear me elaborate more on why I think this, you should probably check out my original video. But in short, the layouts are memorable, super fun to do, they complement the abilities well, the energy spheres are fun to collect and cleverly hidden. It's all just as amazing as it was in the original game, and you know what? I'm fine with that, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's not to say there weren't a few minor changes that were made to the level design, though, and one of them, probably the best change out of, like, the two big changes I noticed, was a little secret room. You might have heard of the kind of room I'm talking about before, if you know what I mean. And if you want to find it, well, I'm not going to disclose too many details here in case you want to have that as a secret for you to seek out yourself, but it has to do with the magic number of 86. Just a little hint. The second big change to the level design, though, is probably the worst thing about Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe, and that is just how poorly the new Sand and Mecha abilities were actually implemented into the level design. I talked about it a little bit before in how Sand and Mecha both had introductions that sort of took away from other abilities, and yeah, that's just a little bit of the problem, and it's probably the most egregious thing they do, but it's certainly not the only issue. Besides stealing the spotlight from abilities that are being, like, shown off by appearing in the same location as them, being some of their first appearances in the entire game as well, the enemies that give these abilities are also just randomly placed about, and it, like, shows. Even if I never played Return to Dreamland before, I could probably tell something's up with these placements. Like, why is he even here? Well, what is this? Probably the weirdest new enemy placement in the entire game has to be in Stage 2 of Nutty Noon, where before you enter the first door in the stage, you find the little sand guy chilling on a star block, just covering up the door. Was there seriously nowhere else to put this guy? And the festival is right here for some fucking reason. I don't know why it's here exactly to kill these Scarfies, but they're not even gonna be chasing you because they're stuck up there and you already unlocked the doors, so I don't really know what's up with this. This is just such a weird placement. Not all enemy placements are bad because some make sense being put into just kind of empty space, not being occupied by anything in the original game where they fit right in, but more often than not, I find myself just wondering who decided on where to put these guys. I think there's a few different fixes to this problem that could have been done. One, place these guys better. Don't put them in front of doors. Don't put them right at the end of stages. Look for empty space in the stages and put them there more often than whatever this is. Maybe even replace some enemies that didn't have much value in the original game. I don't think anyone except for like hardcore purists are gonna be too angry about that. Hell, while we're out here angering these theoretical hardcore Return to Dreamland purists, why not even add some new rooms into stages that sort of make use of these abilities, let you learn how they work without stealing anything else's spotlight, and maybe rewarding you with some point stars or 1-ups or something. I think altering energy sphere placements might be going a little too far. Besides, just casually using these abilities lets you nab a substantial amount of energy spheres even without any sort of backtracking, so I think it's kind of a compromise. Oh, or maybe they could use those little Magoland stamp ticket things you find littered throughout stages, you know? They just give you like one stamp in Magoland, which isn't much, but I do appreciate them. Gives me more motivation to tackle challenges where in the original game it would mostly just be like point stars or something. I know it sounds like a really small thing, and it's a weird thing to say is the worst thing about Return to Dream Land Deluxe, but it's really how I feel. I felt so weird just seeing these plastered into stages, feeling so inorganic and obviously phoned in. It's like Hal spent too much time refining the abilities to, you know, be good, which is a good thing, but they probably should have thought a little more about where they were actually placing the enemies in question. While we're on the topic of level design changes, Extra Mode does actually have a couple of the level design changes as well, beyond just enlarging enemies, which is good. It gives it more changes beyond the enlarged enemies, as well as the more difficult bosses and smaller health bar. Probably the biggest change I noticed was that healing items have been more often than not replaced with point stars, which I don't think was in the original game, at least not to this extent, so that was a pretty cool thing to see, and it made it a little more difficult to get through. And the biggest change I noticed was that Stage 1 of Cookie Country actually has a few changes in the intro bits, such as these roughs that show up and this Gordo you need to jump over, and judging from that, I was like, oh, they changed extra mode, let's go! And really, it was just minor changes, which was kind of disappointing, but this was still a cool thing to see, and it made extra mode a little more fun to play through this time around. Not to say extra mode wasn't always fun, like in the original game, because it was just the main story but harder, so obviously it was going to be fun, but these little changes really did make it just a pinch more fun than the original version. The Lore Star Cutter also received some small tweaks. The ability test rooms now have Sand, Mecha, and Festival integrated into them, and there's also Sand and Mecha challenges, both of which I think are super fun. The Sand challenge especially is really fun to do, such a satisfying platinum medal to earn, but the biggest changes, though, happen to be in the bottom part where the sub-games were in the original game, because due to Merry Magoland introducing a ton more sub-games to Return to Dreamland, they made it huge. Kind of confused as to why this is like even here though, and why they didn't repurpose this into like something else, because you could just go to Magoland after you unlock it after clearing like the first stage, and from there you get access to everything. So it's not like you're gradually unlocking sub-games to play in Magoland, you're just unlocking them to play in the Lore Star Cutter, which is just strange, but alright. It does give a better feeling of progression as you collect energy spheres, as you unlock like more things regularly. I guess it's better than Forgotten Land, where the unlockables just kind of dip off after a certain point with the Waddle Dees. But it never really felt like there was ever any sort of cutoff going on with the original Return to Dreamland, as you collected energy spheres, unlocking stuff like every like 1 or 2 stages, so I don't really know why they did this. Just kind of confusing, but it's not like too big of a deal. Not really a flaw at all, actually. I guess it's alright. Nothing too important here. Just kind of fast access to sub-games without going to Magoland, I guess. Also, I like the challenges so much I want to elaborate a little bit further on them. The Mecha Challenge, I think, is the weakest of the 2 new challenges in the game. The rest of them are all just as good as they were in the original. All very good challenges, tons of fun to play through, but back on topic. The Mecha Challenge, it feels a little empty, like there's a lot of like just empty space throughout the whole thing, but the Mecha Challenge is tons of fun to play through, and it's a great way to test your skills with the new copy ability. There's a lot of ice blocks you can melt, lots of room to just fly around using your jet hover, a lot of good secrets, and enemies that are perfectly arranged in a line, and it feels so good just using your laser to mow them all down. The Sand Challenge, though, like I said before, is one of my personal favorites. I feel like it makes perfect use of like all of Sand's moves. That one bit at the end where you need to use the guard and jumping out of the guard onto these platforms, a la the high jump challenge, is so satisfying to pull off good. Oh, it's just a wonderful challenge. And I like how you unlock it shortly into Raisin Ruins after you get access to the Sand ability, so it's kind of like a testing ground for you to play around with it. I also thought the EX versions of these challenges also had some pretty tough platinums to obtain. I wasn't getting those on my first run, that's for sure. And it was a lot of fun managing to pull off like near perfect runs of these challenge stages. Hopefully we can finally get that Kirby challenge stage spin-off game I've been wanting for a while now. Yeah, like that's gonna happen. The last level design change I want to mention here, I'm not sure if this directly counts as level design, but there's this park attendant Waddle Dee you'll find throughout the hub worlds in the game, as well as in the arena and True Arena, and you just talk to him. You can equip masks and souvenirs with him. He's also in Magoland if you're interested in, you know, just meeting him there at his own little booth. And yeah, he's just there. I appreciate his existence. He's a very cool guy. Too bad he doesn't let you remove your souvenirs, though, you buffoon! Let me remove souvenir! Oh, and I'll talk more about the masks later, but did you know that some of them actually give you little buffs, like using the Kiner Mind Mask underwater actually gives you the bubble attack that water gets underwater, you know, the sort of double bubble thing? Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And with that, I think I went over most of the changes with the gameplay, as well as the main mode, extra mode, and arena, well, besides the presentation, so let's get to talking about that. To start, these backgrounds are amazing. They look so beautiful, and the same applies to the tile sets as well. Frequently, I found myself just mesmerized by how pretty everything looked. Oh, the environments in this game just look so good. Some of the most visually breathtaking stages in the game for me include the sunset stages of Nutty Noon, basically all of White Wafers, and that stage in Onion Ocean where there's the Atlantic City in the background. Oh, it just looked so damn good. I was mesmerized by that background throughout the entire stage. The backgrounds in the original game looked beautiful, but these are undoubtedly a glow-up. They look so damn good. The actual characters, though, that's a little spicy because, well, mostly one thing, and it's the outlines. The outlines have grown on me a little bit. They're no longer a real issue I have with the game, even though I do think it holds the presentation back a little bit. Something I think they probably could have done, though. I see what they're trying to do, but I think this would have made it better. Maybe darkening the outlines. I saw like a mod or something that darkened the outlines, and honestly, that looked way better. I guess these outlines look a little too fuzzy for my liking, and I think making them a lot crisper would have made them just stick out more and honestly look a little better, even if I would have preferred the characters just kind of meshing into the environment like they did in the original game. And there's also DDD, whose design was growing on me after I made the original video a lot, and I can safely say I love this design now. I wouldn't say he's as expressive as the original Return to Dream Land DDD. I mean, look at this face comparison and I think you'll see what I mean. We all know the DDD face and we all know who did it better, don't lie. But he's got his own unique charm to him, and while he still feels a little out of place, I do love him. He's just a big fluffy guy, and every time I see him smile, my heart melts, and I love the taunts he has so much. It just helped me warm up to this design even faster. Difficult to say where he ranks on the DDD design tier list, but I do like him quite a bit. And as for the soundtrack, all the new tracks we got here are great, and as for the returning ones, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They sound just as great as they did in the original. I think I heard that some minor tampering was done with these tracks to make them sound better or something, but I, hardly notice it, which I think is a good thing because this soundtrack needs more love amongst the fandom. There's also some tweaks with super abilities, such as the enemies now dropping down from another dimension portals, which I find to be pretty interesting, wonder what the lore is there. And also, once Kirby gets a super ability, there's a cool little animation that plays. Easily the best one is Snowball, but they're all pretty great. Also, all the bosses now have pause screen lore, which includes those that didn't have it in the original, which is, well, most of them actually. And I think this is a nice little touch. No, real serious lore dumps here, besides maybe hinting that Metal General has some sort of ties to the Haltman Works company, you know, with the security force and all that, and it makes you wonder who his master is. Maybe it's Haltman, but it's said later on in the Metal General EX pause screen that his master's dead, so unless you want to say this takes place after Robobot in the timeline, then I guess maybe he was deployed by Haltman, but otherwise I don't really know what's up here. Also, we got some Doot lore now. Let's go! So yeah, the presentation, I think in some ways it's a step forward, like a major step forward. Other ways it's a little held back, but I do think overall the game does look better than the original Return to Dreamland, all bias aside. So, with that said, let's talk about Merry Magoland. Alright, before we get into this, I want to throw out a quick spoiler warning in case you still want some Magoland surprises. It's nothing too serious, no real lore stuff here, like the epilogue, but just in case you want to, go oh, that's crazy, I can't believe they did that in Merry Magoland, here's your warning. Alright, so right from the get-go, after this really laggy-looking intro, I don't know why it looks like that, it looks really weird, but you get into this hub world area, and there's not too much here beyond being able to talk to Magalor, who will give you some Wise Waddle Dee level information. That park attendant Waddle Dee booth I was talking about before, where you can swap masks and pick a souvenir, but not remove them. And then there's that giant wall of doors that lets you pick whatever subgame you want to play. There's 10 different doors there, but there's also 11 subgames because Samurai Kirby 100, which I'll talk about a little later, but you can find it in the hub as well. You can also find some hidden Magalors around here, which they give you a couple of stamps and there's a mission for it, but otherwise, they're just a cool little Easter egg you can find. Oh, and right next to Magolor, you can also play some Magoland tours once you unlock those, and it's basically just, you pick a level and you play 4 subgames. It's just like a Mario Party kind of mode, I guess, without the board or anything, just subgames. It's cool, it's cool. I gotta give props to how the hub looks as well. It looks like a real amusement park with all the stuff going on here, and I like how the bosses you defeat in the main game actually just come over here to just kind of hang out. I think that's a cute little touch. And interestingly enough, I think it's running on the same engine as Forgotten Land. You can kind of see it functions just like the world map sections in Forgotten Land do, where you're on the Warp Star, and you can also see how things in the distance kind of slow down like that. So I think it's running on the same engine, but I could maybe be wrong about that. So let's talk about the main attraction of Magoland, the subgames. How good are they? They are great. These are amazing subgames. Most of them are brought back from previous Kirby games, which I think is pretty cool to see all these returning subgames come back, but there's also 2 new original ones in here, being Magalor's Tome Trackers and Booming Blasters, which is basically just the Scope Shot replacement. Yeah, it really does suck to see Scope Shot go, but Booming Blasters is actually a really damn good subgame, and I think it's a solid replacement despite trying to do something entirely different from Scope Shot, besides the fact it's about shooting people. In Booming Blasters, each player has 4 hit points, and they're all dropped into this little 3D arena. They all got 5 shots of ammo on their base gun, but there's also a max of 10 shots you can have. If you pick up an ammo pickup that will periodically drop throughout the match, you'll be able to recover 5 of your ammo points or max it out to 10. And each player also has a little meter where each 2 people they hit, at least, well, the first 2 sets of 2 people they hit, their attacks get bigger, not stronger, just a little bigger so it's easier to hit opponents. And you have the choice of just firing a normal straight shot that has like infinite range, or doing a little overhead shot that goes above you and can pass above walls and leaves a little explosion once it hits the ground. And from there, it's off to war, and oh damn, this is a ton of fun to do. There's a lot of stuff that can go on in a game of Booming Blasters, and there is so much strategy that goes into it. Sometimes you'll just like get into a shootout with someone, your bullets clash, you see who gets down first. Other times you'll probably just be out of ammo and you'll be fleeing away from the competition just waiting for an ammo pickup to spawn, or maybe you're the one who's chasing that guy, the poor defenseless sap with no ammo left. There's even the super shot thing that you can use once it spawns in the arena, and oh man, it is devastating if anything gets in its path. It only does 1 point of damage, sure, but the hitbox on that thing is huge. And don't take too long or else Kabula's gonna show up and start dropping bombs around the arena in order to hopefully speed up the match. It makes long matches of Booming Blasters so fun to play and so fun to watch. It's just an experience, man. And also, I love the Air Ride remix medley thing they got going on in the background. That's so awesome. When I heard Machine Passage and Sky Sands play for the first time on Booming Blasters, I actually lost it. That was so cool. Kirby Air Ride 2 confirmed? Oh god, guys, Kirby Air Ride 2 has been confirmed. They're dropping little hints. Guys, Kirby Air Ride 2 is happening, guys. I think Booming Blasters is a little inferior to Scope Shot overall because, well, I just really like Scope Shot, even though Booming Blasters is still a top-tier sub-game. But I do think it does fit better with Magoland than Scope Shot would due to it having a more party, multiplayer-focused approach, and Scope Shot is more dedicated towards single-player gameplay. I was a little worried if Booming Blasters would be a good Scope Shot successor, and thankfully it was. As for Magolor's Tome Trackers, I don't think it's as good as Booming Blasters, but it's still a pretty good sub-game. The gameplay of Tome Trackers works like this. Magolor will request a tome, and all the players need to run around this little area to try to get to the tome first. The tome could be, like, literally any one of these tomes, so always be on your guard. And once there's 25 seconds left, the number of tomes increase, and Magolor starts asking for multiple of a specific kind of tome, but they're all the same color, so now you need to pay attention to the actual markings on the tome, which are all cool little references, which I appreciate. But this is also where the sub-game becomes a lot more fun, because it's more of a rush to nab all the tomes, and man, this can really change the tides of a match depending on who nabs the most tomes here. Not to mention these tomes are also worth more points. Just picking up one of these is worth like 2 points instead of the 1 you'd have in like the first half of the match. I think maybe the first half could have been more exciting because the second is very solid. The first half just moves kind of slowly and just kind of feels like a chore. You're waiting for the more adrenaline pumping second half to start. I think all of us are when we play this. But it's still a very good sub-game, even if I do think it's kind of annoying how pressing up is what lets you select the tome, and sometimes I'll just find myself accidentally picking up the wrong one when I didn't mean to pick that up. As for the rest of them, they're all pre-existing sub-games. I'm not going to talk too in-depth about them here, but I think all of them are an improvement over their original counterparts, whether it's just them looking better, adding multiplayer, or just having brand new features entirely, or in the case of Smash Ride, becoming functional. What? Yeah, I don't know if it's a hot take, but the original Squeak Squad Smash Ride just sucks. That shit does not even work, I swear to God. The touch controls just don't work. They suck. This is what Smash Ride should have been. This is good stuff, and I love being able to pull off chain reactions, but like I said, I'm not going to get too in-depth here. I think they made a ton of great choices for which sub-games to bring back. Of course, Checkerboard Chase. Checkerboard Chase deserved it. Checkerboard Chase is awesome. So good to see it come back, and the high-speed mode is just awesome. Definitely the best way to play Checkerboard Chase. But that's not the only good inclusion as well. I already talked about Smash Ride, which is a good inclusion because they actually fixed it, but Egg Catcher's a classic, Bomb Rally's a classic, Samurai Kirby's iconic, so I get why they brought it back, even if it's not like the best Kirby sub-game ever. Good to see Ninja Dojo return because, well, of course it would. It's in the base Return to Dream Land, and it works well for a party game. Kirby on the Draw, another great choice. I really like the button controls, honestly, a little more than I like the original touch controls. And Crackety Hack, nice choice. Pretty satisfying to pull everything off and get that perfect score. Also, I like the little Waddle Dees they added on the other side of Popstar. That's just pretty cute. So yeah, Hal clearly knew what they were doing, deciding which sub-games to bring back, because I think these are all excellent choices. And then there's also Samurai Kirby 100, which really got my hopes up when I first saw it, because I was thinking, oh, are we gonna get like 100 versions of all these sub-games, even though I don't know how some of those would even work. Like, I wanted the Checkerboard Chase 100, but like, Imagine how big the board would have been. That would have been like impossible to play. But Samurai Kirby 100 isn't even like you going up against real people, just like predetermined times from other players, which I think is kind of lame, but it's pretty satisfying seeing that animation where you just slice through everyone. It feels so good to get a high ranking. That also kind of leads me into Magoland's biggest flaw, which I think is the lack of online multiplayer, and this also applies for the main game as well. Why is there no online multiplayer? Come on, Hal, you're better than that. But with the sub-games especially, where the hell is it? I want to play Checkerboard Chase online. I want to play it with the homies. What is this? What is this? Why? When all these sub-games were first announced, I was expecting there to be online multiplayer. I was so hyped to have a Checkerboard Chase tournament with the Kerbros, but no, unfortunately, I'll have to go to the Checkerboard Chase regionals instead. Beware the almighty strat of camping in the corner. Thankfully though, Magoland has more content than just being able to play these classic sub-games, because there's also missions and stamp cards you can do, and they play a big role in giving you masks, which are the game's main new collectible. When you first enter Merry Magoland, you'll notice you have a whopping 100 missions to complete. Each subgame has its own little set of missions, but there's also some general missions you can do by like finding a hidden Magolor or playing a Magoland tour. Most of these force you to tackle a subgame in new ways, which I think is something really cool, whether it's landing those satisfying smash hits playing Bomb Rally, or scoring over 700 points in level 3 of Kirby on the Draw. These subgames can really push you to the limit sometimes, and they really do show just how much depth these subgames have. There's also ones that just require you to wear a certain mask, and yeah, these are just kinda it's pretty simple stuff, but some of them do have some cool references, and oh, you see that? You see that name adding Adeline like the cutscene from Kirby 64? Oh, how you geniuses, you! The names for some of these are just brilliant references. Another one from Checkerboard Chase I particularly like is the final one, which has you completing all the missions, and it's called like Crystal Clear Completion or something like that. Oh, like crystal shards, get it? Oh, I love that, dude. That is so awesome. It feels really satisfying being able to knock a bunch of these out, and with every 10 you complete out of the first 100, you get a little statue built in the Magoland Park, as well as a mask to go along with it, which are just like variant masks, and some of them are kind of lame, but it's pretty cool. And also, once you start Extra Mode, I believe you get 20 true extra missions, which are just harder missions, and they can all be cheesed with dummy players, like, you know, just connecting like a second, third, and fourth controller to just not do anything. But trying to do these legit, which I did for most of them, yeah, it was pretty tricky stuff, and it felt really satisfying being able to pull some of that off. And the missions only give you some masks. If you want the rest of the masks, you're mostly going to be relying on the stamp card, as well as doing other things like beating bosses, which gives you boss masks, or clearing modes like the Magolor Epilogue. But you'll mostly be relying on these stamp cards in order to unlock most of the masks, where after you complete like one card, you get a little mask, at least for the first 50 before they start just showering you in more souvenirs. Each time you complete a sub-game, you'll receive a certain amount of stamps based on things like your placement, how well you did, as well as how many missions you completed while doing that sub-game, and it feels really good being able to knock out a bunch of cards, get a bunch of stamps, and get a bunch of masks too. Also, these cards have some pretty nice artwork. It looks like stuff you'd find on DeviantArt, but like the good side of DeviantArt, not that side. And as for the masks themselves, these are just as fun of a collectible as I was hoping they'd be. There's a lot of variety with the characters spanning the entire Kirby franchise, and while I do think it's kind of a shame that there's like 20 or so masks that are just variants, I kinda get it, and there's still a huge variety of characters to choose from, so it doesn't feel like a big gut punch at all. Some of the variants are pretty desperate though, like what? Unfortunately, there is no Kapar mask. Look at this guy, he'd be perfect for a mask, but there's still a lot of good character variety here, including Nago, which I think is great. I was expecting a Nago mask, and when I finally managed to nab this bad boy, I was so hyped. Also, he's one of the masks that have voice lines, oddly enough. Let me talk about that real quick. On the mask selection screen, if you happen to see any masks that have this sound symbol next to them, they actually replace your character's voice lines with voice lines of that character, or in some cases, just sound effects like Nightmare. Why is he making Kirby's Adventure sound effects? That guy has a voice. I don't care if that's Parallel Nightmare. There's no way he doesn't sound like that. Probably the most interesting mask to have voice lines is Nago, which oddly enough is actually a voice and not like some sort of sound effect. And it's weird because all the other animal friends, including the animal friend partners like Pig and Mine, just have nothing. They don't even make sound effects. So I think it's interesting that Nago's the only one that received a voice for this. It's like this little cat meow. I think it's pretty cute. And yeah, as you can tell, I mained the Nago mask because not only is Nago the best animal friend, but one of the greatest Kirby characters of all time. Fight me. So yeah, if you guys stuck to any particular mask during your playthrough, I'd love to know what it is. If you're still watching this, please, I need the interaction. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in Magoland, and I think it's awesome. Merry Magoland, such an awesome mode. I was hooked on this like during the second world, it halted my progress so bad. I literally got all 50 of the stamp card masks before I even started on World 3, which was just insane. But yeah, awesome time killer, awesome new mode. I love it. I'm definitely going to be busting this one out for any Kirby parties in the future. Move aside to Sonic and the Secret Rings party mode, the new party game king is here. Kirby's return to Dream Land Deluxe. And so this leaves us with actually two, but we'll talk about the True Arena later. One thing that we have left to talk about, one major mode, and the thing I was the most hyped for since I found out it was going to be in the game, and that is the Magolor Epilogue. Let's get into it. Ah yes, the main attraction of Return to Dream Land Deluxe, at least for me, the Magolor Epilogue. This was so hyped. When it was announced, I lost it. I was so excited to see what was in store, and I was not disappointed. Just want to throw a spoiler warning out for the actual epilogue. I'll throw another one in when we get to, like, the endgame stuff, but if you want to go in, like, completely blind, I guess just skip to the outro. But I also want to do a quick one for the story and extra mode, because, like, right off the bat, I'm going to be spoiling those, so I'll give you a bit of time. Alright, let's get into it. Going into the Magolor Epilogue with the typical Kirby fan expectation, I was thinking that maybe Magolor would be vanquished to the Kirby version of hell for his sins in the main game, where he'd meet up with the Kirby version of Satan. That's the Kirby GCN final boss, by the way. I mean, it would make perfect sense to use this guy. Come on, GCN was repurposed in Return to Dreamland. Bring him back, make it full circle. And considering this is like another dimension type place, maybe he could also meet Susie along the way or something, assuming this takes place before Robobot, which I think would be pretty cool, because, you know, Susie went into another dimension to study sphere doomers and stuff, so yeah, typical Kirby fan expectations. Let's see if those are actually met. Right from the get-go, we open to a flashback of Magolor Soul's defeat. Interesting. Magolor Soul. So I guess Magolor Soul's like canon now or something? Is that the true canonical version of the final fight with Magolor, or was that just like some oversight? Interesting. I wonder what implications this has for the lore. We then cut to Magolor, who's just floating through this dimensional abyss until suddenly, he became homeless and powerless too. And now we play through a quick little intro section, get our first fruit fragment, and from there, we have the game just kind of open up to us a little bit. Magolor controls basically like he did in Star Allies, although with a neutered moveset, and you don't have all the moves at their full power from the start. From the beginning, his attacks have like no range, they can't be charged, you can only like hover for a super short amount of time, and your health bar is quite small. It seems impossible to make it through the game like this. Oh wait, I'm not even gonna write that one down. Someone already beat me to it, I can just feel it. But by collecting enough magic points, the Magolor Epilogue's main collectible, you can access this little screen in the map in order to upgrade your abilities and make them stronger. You'll also unlock more abilities as you progress through the game, whether it's a dimensional vanish dodge, these super powerful attacks you can only use once your magic meter is full, which you can fill up by collecting magic points, or this bottle item, and the most useful thing of them all, this dash. This dash speeds up the game so fast, and it really helps your combo game, and speaking of combos, that's a pretty important part of the Magolor Epilogue gameplay. There is no more Ultra Sword attack in his moveset though, you cannot unlock that, they just completely removed it, so yeah, sad day for all Ultimate Choice Magolor mains. But about the combos, these combos are very important to the gameplay. By defeating enemies and breaking certain blocks, you can rack up a little combo counter you can see in the top left of the screen, and yeah, it basically functions how you'd expect a combo counter to work. You got a certain amount of time in order to keep your combo going. If you take too long without destroying an enemy or block, it will just end, or if you get hit, it will also just end. The main motivation for getting huge combos, besides just seeing that number rise up to astronomically high levels, is getting more magic points the higher your combo gets, as well as earning medals, which I'll talk more about later. The combo system is really great, and it's just tons of fun. Even casual players have a reason to mess with it because, well, they're gonna want the MP. But me, personally, I just think it's tons of fun to mess around with. I actually thought grinding for the rest of the upgrades I needed to get in the post-game of the Magolor Epilogue. There's not much of a post-game, by the way, just letting you guys know. But yeah, I was grinding to max out all my skills, and I was actually having some fun because there's a pretty good spot for grinding, and you can get some pretty high combos there, and I was just having fun upgrading my abilities and seeing how high I could push that counter up. It took me like less than an hour, and I was having a blast doing it. So yeah, the Magolor Epilogue has some pretty great gameplay. It's unlike anything we've ever seen in a Kirby game before, and I feel like it's only complemented by the brilliant stage design. Magolor Epilogue has over 20 different stages to complete, and it gives it a pretty decent runtime for a little side mode. Personally, I don't think the stages are the most memorable things in the world, although maybe that's just because it's fairly new and all the stages haven't had enough time to sort of simmer and differentiate themselves in my mind, but they're all tons of fun to play through. Some memorable stages to me include the first one, where I think it makes some great use of your limited skill set at that time, and also you unlock a bomb upgrade shortly after entering the first stage, which I think is used well during the stage with enemies you can't really hit otherwise. There's also some stages that have this little magic orb thing around a room somewhere, and you're basically trapped in a room with that, and some enemies that will gradually spawn in, and you need to protect it from the enemies in order to receive a healthy dose of magic points. Nice way to mix up the usual enemy room rush thing you usually find in Kirby games, and each dimension also has one stage where you're running away from that another dimension slime wall thing you find in the main games with the another dimension portals where you get the energy spheres from the sphere doomers, and it's basically just going backwards in one of the stages from the main game, and I think it's actually a pretty cool way to repurpose those assets and level designs. It's a fresh take on a pre-existing stage, and I think these are pretty good to play through, and each stage also ends on a little enemy rush, which I think is pretty good because it's making use of your whole skill set trying to take down all these enemies, and of course there's the combo stuff you can pull off here, which makes it even more fun. As I said before though, I feel like these stages are kind of lacking in identity, at least right now. They all kind of blend together in their dimension, and I feel like that has something to do with the way that they're presented. Of course, the presentation is very good. Return to Dream Land Deluxe has some killer backgrounds and tile sets after all, but I'm not gonna really remember these stages by, like, really anything in particular. I'll mostly be like, oh, isn't that the one with the green tile set, even though there's an entire dimension that has a green tile set, rather than, oh, isn't that the one where Magalor survived a gang shootout? I'm not asking for a gang shootout stage, as cool as that would be, but I'm just kind of asking for maybe more set pieces and things to differentiate these stages. For example, maybe have like an actual sort of pyramid thing going on in the second dimension, complete with that another dimension feel. Hell, maybe even try a volcano or something, and maybe in the third dimension they could also try tackling a full-on water stage. I don't think there's like any water in the Magolor Epilogue, so I think this would have been a pretty cool thing to see how the game functions underwater with Magalor. But it's not too big of a deal because maybe as time goes on they'll stick out in my mind more clearly, and either way, the stages are still a blast to play through and it's a super fun mode. There's also a medal system in here, like in the challenge stages, you know, bronze, silver, gold, and the elusive platinum rank, which is the highest rank, although it's not really particularly elusive here. I found myself getting a lot of platinums on my first try, but I do appreciate having this around, and it's pretty cool being able to go back to stages you didn't ace in order to nab a platinum with your improved skill set. I'm pretty sure in order to get all these platinums you simply need to go through the stage quickly as well as rack up a high combo. I can't say for certain, but that's a strategy that always worked for me. There's also these ordeal door stages you'll find which are designed around a specific level of a specific skill, which I think makes the design a little more interesting because it's specifically designed around something, so you need to use that in order to clear the stage. And there's not as much freedom you have in the way of tackling these, but they serve kind of like challenge stages, I guess you could say. I say that, but really these are designed in a way like I've never seen anything in a Kirby game before. Super interesting designs going on here. My personal favorites include the ones that let you just dash around and make great use of your dash, as well as this one where you're kind of trapped on this little moving platform and it's almost like a bullet hell game. There's no medal system here, just you get a bunch of magic points and get to learn your skill set better, and they're super fun, so I'm not really complaining there. The bosses, however, do have a ranking system, and I think that these are a pretty good reimagining of some of the base Return to Dream Land bosses. All these bosses are great reimaginings of their original counterparts, but some of the ones that stick out in my mind the most include the Rampaging Doomers, where I just think it's cool to be fighting 4 Doomers at once in a boss fight, and also there's some pretty unique attack telegraphing here with these explosion spots, which I really like, and Electricy Duder, who I got into a pretty close fight with my first time around. I really did underestimate this dude. He's also got a killer design and a lot of cool attacks like this one where he retreats into his hat to shoot lightning bolts. Really cool stuff. Probably the most difficult boss in the game for me, at least earning a platinum medal, was Fiery Puffer due to the invincibility frames that really cut off your combos, which are really the only determining factor in getting a ranking on the bosses. Took me the most tries out of anything in the game when trying to platinum this fella. It was pretty satisfying to do though, and it's a solid fight overall. The stage design in the Magolor Epilogue is so brilliant it even seeps over into the map design. Lots of cool stuff going on here. The whole thing is super interconnected. By exploring, you can find all sorts of little secrets that connect the map even further. Really cool stuff. Nice areas that make use of your own little skills like these dimensional vanish walls. Nice way to teach the player how their new abilities work in a safe environment, as well as teaching them about some additional properties of those abilities. It's so tightly designed and nice and fun and explorable that there's even a little howl room hidden around here. It's cool stuff. And of course the presentation is on point once again. I said a lot of the areas look pretty samey, and yeah, they kind of do. They're all just sort of the same, another dimension looking stuff. But it does look pretty good, so I'm not really complaining there. And I appreciate the color variety they have here with each of the different dimensions. And also the music is really damn good too. It feels like they tried a more unique style of music here than anywhere else in the game, and I think a lot of these tracks are pretty damn good. Some of my favorites include the final boss music and the ordeal door theme. Pretty good stuff. And with all that said, now we get to the really big spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about the final bosses and the lore implications. It's going to be big, so if you still want to keep that a surprise, skip to the outro. And so, Magolor collects all 5 fruit fragment pieces and, wait, that's just a giant, like, gem apple seed thing. Huh, interesting. I wonder what this could mean. Oh, hey, look. It's the Grand Doomer. Oh, no, it's not. It's the Crowned Doomer. Basically, the Grand Doomer over these weird little gear devil-like Doomers in this dimension. This fight is also pretty good. It's like the Rampaging Doomer fight mixed with Grand Doomer, which I think is pretty cool. Got the same sort of explosion telegraph attacks, which are super fun to dodge, as well as plenty of new attacks, including this chaotic laser one. Really good stuff. But that's not the only thing stopping Magolor here, because the Master Crown is back, and the Master Crown has fused with the Gem Apple Seed in order to become Wispy Woods. Is that you? So that's why they skipped giving Wispy Woods a counterpart in the epilogue for so long. Huh, he was the final boss the whole time. Oddly poetic. But jokes aside, this fight is damn awesome. Not only is this eldritch tree thing so goddamn cool looking, but oh, so many of these attacks are just so fun to do. You don't even really get to have much confrontation with it head on, except for that one attack where it does sort of intrude on your own little space. You're mostly doing damage through these roots, and it's really cool. It's a nice way of attack. And there's also these gem apple bombs that you need to destroy before they explode. Lots of enemies that come into the fight at some points, and you need to be very mindful of where those roots come in from, because you need to focus on dodging them first, then landing your attacks. That health bar is down, but Magolor's not done yet. He goes over, grabs the legendary sword Misteltein, I think. I don't know, I don't speak Norse. And, wait, what's he doing? What's he doing? Nah, Magolor would never do the program advance. Oh, no, bro. Bro, did he do it? Did he do it? No way. He's pulling it off! He's doing the program advance! Look at him go! Yeah, you kill that stupid tree, Magolor! Yeah! My little mango man, kill him! Kill him! Yeah! Facts, bro. What he's saying is true. Oh my god, I can't believe he did that. I love dead tree remains too, buddy. Oh my god. What? Does he get to go back home? He pulled up the program advance and he gets to go back home. This is the best ending ever, bro. Yeah! Magolor! Yeah! That was awesome! That was sick. And so let's just let the credits roll. They're not gonna drop anything in the credits that's gonna be like totally just completely Kirby lore changing, mind shattering. And oh my god, Kirby Clash is canon! The Mad Lads at HAL actually did it. They just canonized Team Kirby Clash and Super Kirby Clash all in this one lore drop. Microtransagalor is the real Magolor. Oh my god!
Do you like Kirby?
Do you like Kirby? I like Kirby. Brother, yes, bro! You fucking scamming bitch.
I scam kids too.
It's Galactic Night.
Check out my
See
eBay
you
page.
around. I'll see you around, dear friend.
Check out my eBay page.
That's absolutely crazy. Some would say, that was nuts! Bro, that was actually fucking crazy.
It's something that just feels so crazy, but it makes total sense with all the gem apple propaganda you see around the epilogue. Only HAL would be able to come up with a way to weave their microtransactions into the Kirby lore, but the Mad Lads at HAL actually did it. Good on you, Kumazaki, or whoever came up with this lore bit. Oh look, we even unlock a little bonus stage after beating the final boss. Cool stuff, huh? It's just a bunch of those Another Dimension sections from the main game spliced together, but it's a really good way to grind, and it's also where I got my highest combo. If any of you guys got higher than this, let me know. I'd love to challenge you to a Magolor Epilogue combo off. Then again, I am the Magolor Epilogue combo master if anyone wants to prove me wrong. Yeah, I'd love to see you try. And then, of course, there's the True Arena, which, besides adding Magolor Epilogue bosses into the mix, yes, all of them, sadly, they didn't really do anything with the Master Crown by giving it a new form or any extra lore, but they did change up Magolor's soul quite a bit. Not only do we get this sick remix of Crowned along with some other Return to Dreamland tracks thrown in this single track for good measure, but we also get a killer new background and a second phase to the fight where that eye thing inside the mouth just takes full control. Magalor's no longer in charge. It's the Master Crown's turn to shine, and it's just, oh, it's so sick. Not only do we get harder attacks here, but we also get some brand new attacks like this one based on sand and this other one based on mecha. This was just a genius way to incorporate these new abilities into this new final form, and oh, even in the background you can hear like Magolor doing these little cries for help. It's just so disturbing, but it works so well in the context of this fight. But with that, Magolor's soul is finally defeated once and for all, and oh hey, a gold Kirby mask, that's cool. Too bad it couldn't have been Kapar though, but I can say with 100% certainty, after 100% completing Return to Dream Land Deluxe, that it is one of the greatest Kirby experiences around. And I know that's not really saying much because Return to Dreamland is already an amazing game, but god damn did they knock it out of the park with this one. And that was Kirby's Return to Dream Land Deluxe. So I suppose let's wrap all the way back around to the beginning of the video and let's answer those two questions. Is this the best way to play Kirby's Return to Dreamland? And is this the best Kirby remake? Let's find out for real. And my answer is quite complicated. Is this the best way to play Return to Dreamland, like, objectively? Yes, it is. Merry Magoland, all the brand new sub-games, collectible masks, 2 new abilities that don't completely destroy the game, only break it just a little bit, the Magolor Epilogue, crazy new lore, awesome new boss fights, just a ton of cool new additions that just make this probably the best way to play Return to Dreamland, from an objective standpoint. But personally, for me, it's a really difficult question because Return to Dreamland Deluxe has a ton of brand new amazing features, but the original Return to Dreamland is one of the most important Kirby games for me, a Kirby game I was just super hyped to play, and it's one of the Kirby games that just has my heart the most. It's a game I hold really close to my heart. It's an objective versus subjective debate going on in my head that's been eating me up since I first finished RTDX, and it's so painful trying to decide which one of these games I like more because I love them both so much. Subjectivity is an important part of judging a game for me because, let's say, take the original Kirby's Dream Land, for example. A lot of people like to dunk on the original Kirby's Dream Land for being inferior to basically everything that comes afterwards, and, you know, that's fair, no copy abilities, short runtime, all that stuff, but personally, I absolutely love the first game, not only because I think it's just a genuinely good game, but because it was the first game that I ever played, so it's very important to me. To simply just call that game mid or something would really just... I could never say that. I love that game so much, and it's so damn important to my own personal life. That's the thing with opinions. Even as I'm saying this, I'm not entirely sure if what I'm saying is gonna be true. I wouldn't be surprised if this just constantly flip-flops throughout the rest of my life. But I think for the time being, I'm gonna have to give that extra 0.00001 benefit to Return to Dream Land Deluxe. That first playthrough I had of this game was so damn magical, it felt like reliving my childhood, and I just had a blast going through all the new additions, whether it was just taking a huge break in the main game to just chill out and play Merry Magoland with my brother and just grind out those masks, or the feeling of going through the epilogue for the first time only to be met with that just amazing lore drop of an ending. Trying to balance the objective and subjective while determining which one of these games I like more is just so hard, but I'm gonna give it to Return to Dream Land Deluxe, at least for right now. I wouldn't be surprised if it changes, like, immediately after this video goes up, but just know I still love the OG Return to Dreamland so much. This was such a painful choice to make. And if you remember what I said in my previous video, I said I prefer Return to Dreamland over Superstar. So it would logically make sense that I prefer Return to Dreamland Deluxe over Superstar Ultra, and as far as my Kirby game personal ranking goes, yes, that is correct. But does that make Return to Dreamland Deluxe the best remake? Well, actually, it's a weird answer, but I think Superstar Ultra edges it out as the better remake. Not the better game, in my opinion, but the better remake. RTDX is still a close second though, but comparing it to Superstar Ultra, which not only added things, even though I think Return to Dream Land Deluxe had the better additions, but Return to Dream Land Deluxe also did have some flaws, such as the poor integration of the brand new enemies, the occasionally broken abilities that didn't always fit in perfectly with the game, and some missed opportunities like the online multiplayer that could have been used for the main game as well as Merry Magoland. But with Superstar Ultra, I really can't find anything that's like inferior to the original game. There's no awkward new enemy placement, there's no real missed opportunities, not that I can think of, and even while Return to Dream Land Deluxe I think has slightly improved visuals over the original due to the stellar backgrounds, it's got nothing on the Superstar Ultra sprites. These things are classic. Okay, got nothing on the Superstar Ultra graphics is pretty harsh, but you know what I'm saying. I just prefer the Superstar Ultra visuals, some of the best Kirby visuals up there with the likes of Dream Land 3 and 64 in my opinion. So while I think Return to Dream Land Deluxe is the best way to play Kirby's Return to Dream Land and better than Superstar Ultra, I do think that Superstar Ultra is the better remake. Not the better game, the better remake, like I said before. Kirby's Return to Dream Land is an absolutely amazing remake, an amazing game, and an amazing experience. If you somehow haven't picked it up and got this far in the video, you absolutely need to pick this one up. There is no excuse to not have it besides like maybe being broke. Just like the original Return to Dream Land, it's an amazing game, incredible game, some of the most fun you can have playing a Kirby game, and one of the absolute greatest of all time. It's insane to think I initially went from being a little skeptical about this game when the launch trailer first was shown off to absolutely loving this game to bits, but HAL probably should have been doing some better early marketing, I think. Did we need to wait for all this info to be revealed when that website went up like months later after the announcement? So if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, and if you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe. Also, I have a Twitter, the link is in the description. So with all that said, Pekachow out!